So for today we might take a look at Gamma World. Now this is the most recent edition, I think. It's the 4th ed version of Gamma World. I think there's been a few clones of the game, more recently perhaps, but this is perhaps the most official one. And it was in a nice shiny box, therefore you had to pay VAT on it in the UK, which may have not helped its market penetration. This was very much aimed at a younger audience, 12 plus I believe it says up there, and it's all very garish, and it was based off the 4th edition DnD set, and it was much more suited in this kind of stripped down, simplified version for Gamma World than it ever was for D&D. So, cracking open the box.
In fact, it seems like this creature will eat anything. Well, just about anything.
She looked right at my studs and cooled out. This dude's into metal!
What do we have? We have the rulebook, which is a little kind of half-page size one, and supplements, which I did buy. There were 2, I think there were only 2. There may have been 3, but I may have left it too late. And you have various maps, which is always a useful thing to have. These would suit any post-apocalyptic or even modern or cyberpunk game, really. So there was a bunch of double-sided maps of reasonable but limited use if you wanted to do things on a board instead of theatre of the mind, and like D&D's 4th ed, this was very much pushing you to use the miniatures and figures. They were really trying to kind of cash in on the whole CCG side. I guess they were thinking they could make more money that way, but it was really just annoying. These cards were your kind of your loot, and they were also temporary mutations for your characters. And of course, if you didn't have the cards, you'd just have the same stuff turning up again and again. But what did people immediately do? They got together and they copied the text and so on and made big files available online for you to download, so you could use all the ones that weren't in the cards that you had. Yeah, which was nice of them to do an end run around what Wizards were trying to make you buy, but probably counter to the profitability of the game. And what I did really like was the fact that they did include all these tokens for you to play with, because, you know, figures are expensive, take up a lot of space, but if you just have a bunch of stuff, a bunch of these little card punch-outs of creatures and things, you know, it's easy to use. Nice different colours for the player characters and things. So yeah, that was good. I've got a bit of a thing for boxed games, it being so old school, and you don't really see it much anymore.
Stop you, boy! No. I'm sorry, but if they think I'm endorsing car accessories, they've got another dipstick stick coming. No, they've tried this one before, and I'm real tired of it. And they expect me to change gear now and start
which is a big shame. But tokens was a good way around it, and I don't know why more games don't do it. I do know that they did bring out some other boxes of tokens, but maybe they didn't sell well. I don't know. Pathfinder's got some good sort of standy ones with little bases and things, similar for Starfinder and so on. So I don't know why that never really took off. So what is Gamma World then? Well, I guess the clue's in the name, really. It's a world full of gamma radiation. Or so you would think. Yeah, it's a post-apocalyptic setting. It used to be the kind of standard after the bomb sort of thing, though the apocalypse wasn't necessarily spelled out in absolute detail. This time around, they went with the idea that a super collider, like the Large Hadron Collider, went awry. I think that was kind of something a lot of people were talking about and thinking about when this was made. So it kind of made sense to do that. And the idea is that it crashed a whole bunch of different realities together. And so there's all kinds of weird stuff and mutations and odd creatures and so on all wandering around. It doesn't really matter that much, it's just an excuse for all kinds of gonzo weirdness and post-apocalyptic nonsense. As far as games go, it's kind of like Rift's Light, I suppose, really. Making up characters, I mean, all the stats and things will be mostly familiar, and if you've played 4th Ed, other things will be familiar. It's a lot more stripped down than regular 4th Ed, and as a result, much more playable, and I guess much more rewarding of improvisation in the same way that old school basic D&D and stuff was. But you would create your character by mixing together 2 different origins. So you might be an empathic doppelganger, or an android cockroach, or I don't know, a hawk plant. Who knows what else? Yeah, you could mix these together in combinations, and those would give you some basic powers and things that you could use, and you know, some role-playing stuff, bits and pieces. If you want to be boring, you can just be a human. You know, it's all fairly simple and familiar. The mutations thing I didn't really like. The idea of temporary mutations, I never really cottoned to that. Would far rather have them be permanent. The gear was a lot more fun though. You could get all kinds of weird random nonsense.
As if I don't have enough to worry about. Slave rebellions, workers who actually want to be paid, and my biggest star-turned rebel! Ingrate!
End up having to try and use that in the game. Things like leaky fusion rifles that would irradiate you and so on. But really, all you were kind of doing was near-future dungeon delves, I guess, and encounters with weird stuff, trying to carve out communities and so on in this wasteland. But it was very much focused on the combat, though you could improvise and do other things. And there just wasn't quite as much in-depth character development as even D&D 4th Ed. Not that that was exactly replete with meaningful options. Now, it is just weird and crazy and gonzo, and anything could turn up whatsoever. You had kind of completely free reign. I think that may have possibly, potentially, been off-putting to new players, but they did include plenty of encounters and things for you to play out, but they were very heavily combat focused, with very little role-playing in them at all. Not even really much encouragement for that. The supplementary material gave you some more adventures, some new jobs or vocations as they're called, new creatures, new traits you could mix together, so you could be something new. A photonic octopoid, an antimatter blasting demon. You could mix and match. That was one of the things that was really great about it, and that's something that inspired me when it came to Machinations of the Space Princess, was just the sheer openness that was potentially there and wasn't quite maybe followed through on when it came to Gamma World. Oh, I think that's a Dave Allsop pick. Charnel zombie. Lovely. Dave is great. Hire him. So yeah, they would expand on the locations and so on, but it never really gave you a sensation of really feeling that the world was anything whole. Like, it kind of made sense. It was just still a mishmash. It's even less organised, even more higgledy-piggledy than the Fallout games are, and a lot of aspects of them don't make a great deal of sense. Another expansion, some more character options, AIs, plastic, shapeshifters, simians, cryptic alliances, so you could have all... It's kind of like Paranoia's secret societies, in a way. Yet more monsters. And so on. It really did encourage people to come up with new things, new templates, basically, to mix together. And for a short but very active period, there were a lot of people making new stuff for this version of Gamma World. It was very popular, weirdly, for some reason, with what would later become the Social Justice Warrior set. When was this published? This was published in 2010. Okay, so yeah, this was just as things were starting to go to shit, really, so far as the incursion that was going on erupted, and yes, Gamma World played its part in my downfall. So yeah, it was really popular with a lot of people, I guess, the same kinds of people who would be Steven Universe fans now, I suppose. But also a lot of old school gamers, because Gamma World is a very old game. I think the first time I ever played it was a version of the game with very, very simple rules that was published in the back of a comic. I don't know if anyone else remembers that. And we played short sessions in the school library in very hushed voices, where the games master mixed the stuff from Gamma World with some stuff from Macho Women with Guns. I seem to remember taking on Smiley Makes. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, lots of people were coming up with different things for this, and the community that had sprung up making all kinds of things for Gamma World tended to be that, you know, those people, shall we say. And I was making stuff too. I made some enemies. Face-raping Mecha Gibbons was one of them. And I made a Nazi template, so you could play a Nazi, whatever else, meant for, you know, creating villains or whatever, because what's a universe of smashed together realities if one of those realities isn't one where Hitler won? You know, what's the point? And partly because of that, and partly because of my notorious blog article, this particular person took umbrage.
Come, Mr. Lee. You don't have to play dumb with me.
That would be foolish, wouldn't it?
It would. Say, Bill, do you think you could rub some of this powder on my lips?
With me. And started slagging me off and arguing with me. And this was before I was even slightly woke, I suppose. And they were... How can I put this nicely? I can't. They were a low-effort trans person, male to female, but their presence online was a huge mass of confusion. Some places their identity was male, some places their identity was female, under all sorts of different names, and I made the mistake of calling them it because I was confused and thought that was a good thing to default to in the heat of the moment. Also, no matter how horrible someone is to you, you are not really allowed to be nasty back to them, and I did lose my temper, which I later apologised for. That was never acknowledged. But yeah, that was very much taken as an example of me being the most horrible person in the world to a lot of people, despite my apology, despite the obvious heat of the moment and everything. And in a situation that has become all too familiar 7 years later, 8 years later, this person was then later accused of rape and other various sexual malpractices after having berated me for my interest in boobs and naughty RP. So there you go. That precedent was set all the way back in 2010. The wokies like their pokies. as to Gamma World, it's a fun game. If you can pick it up secondhand or something, I would recommend doing so. It's interesting from a design point of view, and it's interesting to look at this. It's kind of between the Star Wars D20 version that was out for a while, then you see 4th edition D&D, and then you see this, and it's interesting to see the transitions and processes between them all. And the mix and match character creation to give each player something unique that they can call their own, that's a really interesting mechanic as well. But I think it's also a cautionary tale on some design mistakes that you might want to avoid in the future. Stripping things down too much, taking the role-playing all but completely out of the role-playing game. Good things though, tokens, though it does make the box more expensive. Bad things, cards. Never do this. Never force people to buy CCG packs for something that isn't a CCG. It's the wrong audience, and people just get pissed the fuck off. But yeah, it was a good buy. I've played it precisely twice. Maybe I'll put a scenario together for Awesome Con, which is coming up, which is just me and my friends getting together to play. And maybe I'll try and fix the rules and turn it more into a proper role-playing game. We shall see. Zang.
Everyone's so ordinary. They watch the world with blind